Hello children, how are you today? I'm so glad you could join me again for another Bible story time. And just to get us started, I'd like you to look at this. This is something my daughter Anne did at school when she was in year 7. She was about 12 years of age. It's some sort of ceramic thing, I think. Let's have a closer look at it. Can you see there's a tree here? There's some leaves, and here's a nest. And here's a mummy bird, and she's come with a little worm to give to the 2 birds who are in her nest. And above is some writing, and I'm going to read that to you. It says, "Little birds in a nest must agree, and so must we." In other words, little birds in a nest had to get on with each other. And do you know, that's something my parents used to say to my brother and me, and that is something I used to say to my girls when they were little. That was my way and my parents' way of saying, brothers and sisters have to get on together, and that makes for happy families. Do you like that saying? Well, I do. I think it's lovely. Anyway, I'm going to put this away now, and then we're going to have our Bible story, which is about brothers who did not agree, and they did not agree at all. Get ready to listen. Do you remember last week we learnt about Isaac? Remember, Isaac was Abraham's son, and Isaac was a man who liked peace, not fighting. Even when people were mean to him and wouldn't let him have water from his own wells, he didn't fight back. He trusted God to sort the situation out. Well, Isaac was married to Rebekah, and many, many years later they had twin boys. Now, I think you would know what twins were. Twins are babies who are born at the same time. And these twin boys were called Esau and Jacob. And Esau was just a few minutes older than Jacob. As the boys grew up, they were actually very different people. Let's have a look at this picture. You can see this is Esau. He had red hair, and he grew up into being a very hairy person. And he loved being outdoors, and he loved going hunting. Can you see his bow and arrow which he used? And this is Jacob. Jacob had smooth skin. And Jacob, he didn't want to go hunting. He wanted to stay around the tents where they lived and look after the animals that were there, the cows and the sheep and the goats. And Jacob spent a lot of time with his mother, and his mother was very, very fond of him. Isaac, on the other hand, really admired Esau. He admired his hunting skills and the meat that he got as a result of that. Well, there was another difference between these 2 boys, between Jacob and Esau. You see, Esau was the eldest, and because of that, he would have expected to get the special blessing that Abraham had had from God and the special blessing that Isaac had had from God. And he thought, blessing, God, he didn't care that much about all that sort of thing. But Jacob cared. He thought that was very, very important. And he actually wanted to have that blessing. Well, the years went by, and the boys grew up into being men, and Isaac and Rebekah became much, much older. And in fact, Isaac was so old that he became blind. He couldn't see out of his own eyes, and Rebekah would have had to have looked after him. Well, one day, and this is what happened, one day, Isaac called Esau to him and said, "Esau, I want you to go hunting, and then I want you to cook some meat up for me, just how I like it, and come to me, and then I'm going to give you the blessing." Rebekah overheard this, and she thought, Jacob should get the blessing. And so she said to Jacob, "Jacob, come here. I want you to do as I say. We are going to trick Isaac, and he is going to give you the blessing." And this is what happened. Rebekah gave Jacob here Esau's clothes to put on. And then she gave him some stew, which she'd cooked, just like Isaac liked it. And Jacob took that stew in to Isaac. And you can see on Jacob's arms and the back of his neck, Rebekah had put the skins of goats, which were very hairy. So when blind Isaac touched the arm and the back of the neck of Jacob, he felt hair. And so he thought he was touching Esau. And their trick worked. Isaac thought Jacob was Esau. Isaac blessed Jacob. He gave Jacob the blessing. After Jacob had left Isaac, Esau came back from his hunting trip. And it was then that Isaac and Esau realized that Isaac had been tricked by Rebekah and Jacob. They were very upset. And Esau wasn't just upset. He was so angry. So angry that Jacob didn't think it was going to be safe for him to stay around in this area. Rebekah, his mother, told him to go away to where her brother lived. It was a long way away. And so he did. Jacob went away. And it was a long way, and he went away for a long time, nearly 20 years, in fact. At the end of that 20 years, God told Jacob that it was time for him to return home to where his father was living, back where he had come from in the beginning. And so Jacob packed up his family at this stage. He'd married, he had lots of children, he had lots of helpers, and he had lots and lots of sheep and goats and donkeys and camels and cows. He was a very rich man now. God had blessed him because he had the blessing from God. And so he headed home from this faraway country. And as he got closer and closer to home, he started to think, I wonder if Esau is still mad at me. It was a bit of a worry. So he got some of his helpers, and with his helpers, he gave the helpers a lot of animals, a lot of really good animals. And he sent them ahead. And he said, you go and give them to Esau and let him know that I'm coming in peace and I want us to get along together. And that's what happened. And then Jacob prayed to God and said, dear God, I don't deserve all the love and kindness you've given me, but please help us, keep us safe when we meet Esau. Well, the next day they did meet Esau. And this is what happened. Do you know, God had worked in the life of Esau as he had worked in the life of Jacob. Esau ran up to Jacob and threw his arms around him. He was so pleased to see Jacob. And Esau said to Jacob, Jacob, you don't need to give me all those animals. I've got lots of animals. God has blessed me too. And Jacob said, I really want you to have those animals, Esau. Jacob said, I really want you to have those animals, Esau. You see, Jacob wanted Esau to know that he was actually sorry for some of the bad things that had happened in the past. And so Esau accepted the animals, and that was his way of saying to Jacob, I forgive you for the things that happened in the past. Now, isn't that wonderful? That God was able to work through these two men and he could bring them together again as friends and brothers, even though for many, many years they'd been apart and that in the past there'd been a lot of hard words and unhappiness and anger. And I think God wants us to remember that too in our own families. He wants us to be able to say sorry for wrong things, and he wants us to be able to forgive each other so that we can be friends together in our families. So until next time, children, I will say goodbye, and I hope you and your families have a really lovely week together. Goodbye.